The room is full, 50 people, maybe more. Everyone sees what's happening, the injustice, the cruelty, the lie being told with absolute confidence. Faces shift, eyes dart. Someone should say something, but nobody does. Not because they don't care, not because they don't know, because they're afraid. Afraid of being singled out, afraid of consequences, afraid of standing alone. So they stay silent. And in that silence, power wins. This isn't rare. It's not historical. It's not something that only happens under dictatorships or in dystopian novels. It happens every day. In boardrooms, classrooms, courtrooms, living rooms. Intelligent, moral people watch injustice unfold and say nothing. Not because they're cowards, but because fear is a weapon. And leaders who understand psychology know exactly how to wield it. So why do intelligent people stay silent when evil happens? Because their brains have been conditioned, trained to associate speaking up with danger. And once that association is made, silence becomes survival. This is fear conditioning, and it's one of the most powerful tools of control ever discovered. Here's how it works. Your brain has an alarm system, the amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure deep in your limbic system. Its job? Detect threats, trigger survival responses. When the amygdala perceives danger, it hijacks your brain. Rational thought shuts down. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for reasoning, planning, moral judgment, goes offline. You're not thinking anymore. You're reacting. Fight, flight, freeze. And in most social situations where power is involved, freeze wins, because fighting authority gets you punished, running gets you ostracized. But freezing, staying silent, complying, blending in, keeps you safe, at least temporarily. Leaders understand this. They don't need physical violence to control behavior. They just need to activate the amygdala often enough that silence becomes automatic. How do they do it? Punishment doesn't have to be consistent. It just has to be unpredictable. In authoritarian regimes, this is obvious. Speak out, and you might disappear. You might be fined. You might be publicly humiliated. Or nothing might happen. The uncertainty is the weapon. Because when punishment is unpredictable, your brain can't calculate risk accurately. So it defaults to the safest option. Don't take the risk at all. Stay quiet. Stay compliant. Stay invisible. This works in corporate environments too. Speak up in a meeting, and maybe your idea gets praised, or maybe your manager undermines you, or maybe you're quietly excluded from future projects. You don't know, so you stop speaking. In families, abusive parents use the same tactic. Sometimes they explode over small things. Sometimes they ignore major violations. The inconsistency keeps everyone walking on eggshells, constantly monitoring, never challenging. Fear doesn't require constant violence. It just requires the credible threat of violence, the possibility, the memory. Once fear is conditioned, the threat doesn't even need to be real anymore. It just needs to be imagined. History is full of this. Stalin's Soviet Union, millions dead. But the real control wasn't the executions. It was the fear of being accused, of being reported by a neighbor, a coworker, a family member. People stayed silent not because they were being watched constantly, but because they believed they might be. And belief was enough. Nazi Germany. The Holocaust didn't happen because millions of Germans were sadists. It happened because millions of ordinary people stayed silent. They saw their Jewish neighbors disappear. They knew, but speaking up meant becoming a target. So they looked away, rationalized, stayed safe. Mao's Cultural Revolution. Children reported parents. Students reported teachers. Everyone was a potential informant. Trust disintegrated. Silence became survival. And the modern version, corporate cultures where whistleblowers are destroyed, where questioning leadership is career suicide, where everyone knows the company's doing something unethical, But nobody says anything because mortgages need to be paid. Families need to be fed. The mechanism is the same. Fear silences dissent, and silence enables atrocity. But it's not just individual fear. It's group dynamics. Enter the bystander effect. In 1964, Kitty Genovese was murdered in New York. Witnesses heard her screams, dozens of them. Nobody called the police. Why? Because everyone assumed someone else would. Responsibility was diffused across the group. No single person felt accountable. This happens in every context. Meetings where everyone notices a problem but assumes someone else will address it. Workplaces where everyone sees harassment but nobody reports it. Communities where injustice is visible but collective action never forms. The more people present, the less responsible each individual feels. Add fear on top of diffusion, and you get total paralysis. Everyone's afraid to be the first, to stand alone, so everyone waits for someone else to go first. And nobody does. This is how crowds of people watch terrible things happen, not because they're evil, because they're human. And human brains are wired to prioritize survival over morality when threat is present. Leaders exploit this. Authoritarian leaders don't just create fear, they amplify it, manufacture threats, keep populations in a constant state of anxiety, external enemies, economic collapse, social chaos, terrorism, crime, disease, real or exaggerated. Doesn't matter. The goal is the same. Keep the amygdala activated. Keep people scared. Because scared people don't think critically. They seek protection, and they'll tolerate almost anything from the person promising safety. Dictators do this explicitly. I'm the only one who can save you from this threat. But democratic leaders do it too. Campaigns run on fear. If the other side wins, everything you value will be destroyed. Corporations do it. If we don't hit these targets, layoffs are coming. The media does it. Breaking news, new threat you need to be terrified about. Fear keeps attention. Fear keeps compliance. Fear keeps people looking to authority for protection instead of questioning whether the authority is the actual problem. And when fear becomes chronic, when your body is constantly flooded with cortisol, constantly in threat detection mode, critical thinking deteriorates. You're exhausted, overwhelmed, just trying to survive. You don't have the cognitive resources to analyze whether the fear is justified. You just react. Stay quiet. Stay safe. Obey. This is how fear maintains power, not through constant violence, through constant anxiety, through the belief that speaking up will make things worse. But here's the thing about silence. It protects power, not people. Every system of oppression in history relied on the silence of the majority, not their agreement, just their silence. Because as long as people stay quiet, power can claim legitimacy. Nobody's complaining. This must be fine. But the moment someone speaks, really speaks, the spell breaks. Rosa Parks didn't start the civil rights movement because she was the first black person to be tired of racism. She started it because she refused to be silent, and her refusal gave others permission to stop being silent too. Whistleblowers don't stop corporate corruption because they're smarter than everyone else. They stop it because they refuse to stay quiet when everyone else does, and their courage creates space for others. Every social change, every revolution, every shift in power structures starts with someone breaking the silence, not because they're fearless, but because they choose courage despite the fear. And courage isn't the absence of fear. It's action in the presence of fear. It's cognitive rebellion. The moment your prefrontal cortex overrides your amygdala. The moment you think instead of just reacting. The moment you say, I see the threat. I feel the fear, and I'm speaking anyway. This is why dictators fear ideas more than weapons, why oppressive systems punish speech more severely than action. Because speech breaks the conditioning. It reminds people they have a choice. Silence is compliance. Speech is resistance. And once people remember they can resist, power becomes fragile. So how do you break the cycle? First, name the fear. Acknowledge it. Your brain is reacting to threat, real or perceived. That's normal, but the threat might not be as dangerous as it feels. Second, assess the cost. What actually happens if you speak? Discomfort, social friction, job loss, violence. Calibrate your response to the actual risk, not the imagined catastrophe. Third, find allies. Speaking alone is harder than speaking together. If others share your concern, coordinate. Collective action distributes risk. Fourth, start small. Courage is a muscle. You don't have to be a martyr, but you can ask questions, raise concerns privately, refuse to participate in obvious wrongs. Fifth, remember you're not responsible for outcomes. You're responsible for your integrity. You can't control what power does, but you can control whether you stay silent. And finally, understand that your silence costs something too. Maybe not today, but eventually. The cost is complicity, self-respect, the ability to look back at your life and say you stood for something. Fear is a weapon, but it only works if you don't see it. Once you recognize the mechanism, the amygdala hijack, the conditioning, the group paralysis, you can interrupt it. You can think instead of just reacting. You can speak instead of staying silent. You can resist instead of complying, not because it's easy, because it's necessary, because silence protects power, and speech restores freedom. Not all at once, not perfectly, but one voice at a time, one refusal at a time. One person saying, no, this isn't right, and I won't pretend it is. That's where change begins, not in the absence of fear, but in defiance of it. The room is full. Everyone sees what's happening, and this time, someone speaks.